So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to a very special Facebook Live. My name's Jamie Reid. I'm the host of the Big Cornish Breakfast on Cornwall's new radio station, Rewind Radio. And this evening, we're here to talk about the devolution deal that's been proposed by government and that's been negotiated with Cornwall Council. So, for the purpose of this evening's Facebook Live across the social media channels, we'll be taking your questions, but we're also going to refer to the devolution deal as the deal for Cornwall. If it is accepted, government would give additional powers and funding to Cornwall Council to invest in Cornwall's future and give it more control over the decision making that affects Cornwall's residents and its businesses. Now, the government has set an important condition, though. If Cornwall is going to receive more powers and more funding, then we need to change the way council is governed from the current system of a council leader to that of a mayoral system, which is directly elected by the people of Cornwall every 4 years. Now, before the deal can come to effect, Cornwall Council will need to decide whether to accept the deal and to agree to change its governance model from that leader to the elected mayor and cabinet model. Those two decisions are two sides of the same coin, and the government have made it clear that the council will not be able to secure any of the proposed deal if it doesn't change its governance model. So the whole purpose of this evening is to take your questions, to talk about your concerns, and to talk about the benefits that this will bring to Cornwall. So first of all, I'd like to introduce the members of the panel who are with us this evening. So we have Councillor Linda Taylor, who's the leader of Cornwall Council. Good evening, Linda.
Good evening, Jamie. Lovely to be here. Thank you.
I'd also like to introduce Councillor Ollie Monk, who's responsible for housing at Cornwall Council.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Good to be here.
Also, Councillor Barbara Ellenbrook, who's responsible for children.
Good evening, everybody. Lovely to be here. Hopefully, we'll have some interesting conversations.
And Councillor Lewis Gardner, who's responsible for the economy.
Good evening, Jamie, and really good to be part of the conversation this evening.
And Councillor Martin Alvey, whose in portfolio is the environment.
Good evening, everyone.
So, first of all, to Councillor Linda Taylor, this deal for Cornwall, explain a little bit more. What is it all about?
Okay, so for me, Cornwall Council had an original devolution deal back in 2015, and as the administration, we've been working incredibly hard to help fulfil the ambitions and our priorities. So when our government came to Cornwall Council and asked us would we consider being part of a new devolution deal, I absolutely, after talking to the cabinet, said we needed to pursue it to see what it could deliver. I'm local. I was born in St Ives, and I've spent most of my life hearing people talking about how they want to have control within Cornwall. I absolutely believe that this devolution deal gives that ability for Cornwall to start making its own decisions and determining its own future.
Now, Linda, I'm going to challenge you slightly. Devolution is very much a council term. What exactly does devolution mean?
It allows a local authority, or more importantly, will allow Cornwall to develop out its own strategies. And one of the things that I'm going to point out to is if you're looking at mayoral entities anywhere else within the UK, you can see that this is what I consider to be a stepping stone. And we can see that the government have devolved more powers down to the local authority to be able to determine what they want to do. And I'm sure there'll be questions later on about education, about the economy and housing and our environment. And though when those questions get asked to the portfolio holders, they'll be able to demonstrate quite clearly the difference it will make and the opportunity to be able to make a difference to people living in Cornwall.
So why does it matter so much for Cornwall to get this deal?
Well, I think it does because we've always been ambitious. I think everybody who lives in Cornwall says we're unique. We stand out. We're the special one. And I think when we had that opportunity from government to participate in talking about a second deal, it's because we seize that opportunity because we are ambitious and we absolutely want to make a difference. And I think the fact that the government recognised Cornwall's ambition, recognised how it had delivered on its previous devolution deal, to me it made absolute sense that they came back to Cornwall to give us that other opportunity to start making a difference. So for me, it's a big deal, and I do think it's incredibly important to be recognised and to be part of that influential group of mayors who can really show that they can make a difference.
Councillor Ollie Monk, from your portfolio perspective, obviously this allows Cornwall to have more decisions about what happens in Cornwall, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if the deal goes ahead and we ratify it, immediately it brings two pots of money, an £8.7 million grant that will help regenerate brownfield sites. So you've got quite a lot of stalled sites through viability that the land might be contaminated. And this money is purposefully to get those sites to be viable and get things built there, get some much needed housing built there. And then we've got a further 7 million instant grant as well if we go ahead, which will help stalled sites. So that we've had a quick look at the stalled sites, and we think we can deliver about an extra 140 homes from those stalled sites, which will provide around housing for around another 300 or 400 people. So immediately you can see the impact that this deal will have. And then moving further afield as well, we'll set up a land commission, and that'll be a commission between Cornwall Council, the NHS, the education authorities. And what that aims to do is to look at land that they've got in their portfolios and work together to release some of that land so we can build more housing, not only for their workers, but for other people as well. So, yeah, I'm very, very excited about the prospects and the opportunities that arise from this deal. And it's a work in progress. You know, there's the first stage of it, and that'll work through to the next stage. So it's about getting a seat at that top table, getting those good deals for Cornwall, and delivering much needed housing for local people.
So Barbara, what about children? Obviously, the children are the future of Cornwall. How does this kind of proposal work for them?
Well, I think it's all encompassing, really, Jamie, in that if the economy of Cornwall improves, then obviously the life chances for all our young people improves as well. The big piece of what they're proposing to devolve to us is actually the adult education budget. And that actually is very significant because adult education isn't just about people doing hobbies. It's much more than that. We have within our adult education portfolio, as it were, we do skills of all types, including maths and English for those who didn't do particularly well at school, for example, and all sorts of things in between. So if we get as is proposed, the adult education budget devolved to Cornwall, that means that what we can do is we can actually control what programs we put in place. And of course, adult education, you can join it sort of at 16 plus. So it's not just for adults, as in, you know, somebody who's in their 50s or 60s and wanting to take up a hobby. This is also for people to learn new skills, and allowing us to have that budget also means we can target that skills development where we know we need it for Cornwall. And again, that's really important for our economy.
Well, I will come to Martin and to Lewis in just a few moments' time to talk about why it would be important for them. We've had a question in from Sarah Tresida. She says, I'd like to know why there's no mention of the NHS, social services, social housing in this deal, or why we're not having planning devolved from Bristol. I'll open up to the floor to see who's going to be best to answer that question.
I'm very happy to talk about social housing. What this deal allows us to do is to increase the provision of the housing that we need in Cornwall, and that's mainly houses for local people to be able to rent fairly, or sort of social rent, or to build houses for first-time buyers and key workers. So it allows us further funding and access for that. And I thought you've seen the news today as well. We are getting further planning powers to be able to set up any sort of, if you've got any properties at the moment that are a second home or a holiday let, we're getting powers to set the houses as a primary residence, and we can have that power from Cornwall to be able to decide what that use will be in the future. So we are getting those powers, and we are starting to see that being devolved to us, and then this is just a continuation of that. But all the housing and the focus of the housing that we need to build down here isn't for millionaires moving forward. It's for that local need.
And so, what about when it comes to the NHS and social services? Then, Linda, can I come to you for that one?
So, in relation to the NHS, that doesn't fall within the authority of Cornwall Council. That is what I call a separate statutory body. But what I do believe can happen is, with this devolution deal, it's absolutely extra money. It's to start off with, it's extra 390 million. And I believe that if we can start to make a difference on people's lives, people's earning ability, going back to what Ollie said about social housing, and I'm sure Martin will come in later on, and we'll be talking about, how we can make a difference in relation to how we live within our climate. We will and can make a difference to people's health and well-being. And this is part of our priorities when we came in as an administration. So we don't have that responsibility for the NHS, but my goodness me, we can and will be able to, in my opinion, build on the influences that we're wanting to do in relation to families, life, and be in a better place to live well and age well in Cornwall.
Okay, thank you, Linda. I'm going to go to Merv Davey now, who's put a question on Facebook. He says, we have a housing management problem, not a shortage. Will this deal give us the power to manage our housing control, to help control second homes? Councillor Monk.
As I previously mentioned, the power to manage second homes and the amount of them in Cornwall is a planning function, which is currently under review by the government outside of this deal. So the deal doesn't give us any extra powers to manage the amount of second homes that we've got. The government, I think, have taken that on board, and that's part of what they're moving forward with, as it is anyway. So there's lots of things to do with second homes and to do with housing provision in Cornwall that the government are already addressing. What this deal does, it gives us some money and the ability to sort of kickstart and really, really move forward with providing the right type of housing moving into the future, which is obviously a key priority in Cornwall.
I understand that actually, if you look at some of the policy that's been proposed, that it kind of gives it almost particular policy taking account of those particular issues, such as holiday lets and short-term holiday lets and holiday homes, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, this again is just slightly outside it, but what it does with the deal and what the government are doing, it's going to give us a registration scheme. So at the moment, we haven't got any clear data on how many second homes and where they are across Cornwall right now. It's collected in one place, and with the registration scheme, anyone who's deviating from having their property as a primary residence will have to register if they're going to do a holiday let with it. And then it gives us the ability to know the extent of the problem in various areas, and then we can act on that and put mitigations in place in areas where there is too many second homes. So yeah, we're really, really pleased about that. I mean, the council as it's well. Someone mentioned in the chat bar about social houses and how many we're building. Well, currently we've got the housing. Just like to go off topic, we have the housing revenue account, which means Cornwall's got 10,500. Council houses that's called Cornwall Housing Limited, and those houses generate a massive income, and we're reinvesting that income. We're currently delivering over in build at the moment of 377 council houses with a further pipeline of 400 houses. So we've got nearly 1,000 houses within Cornwall Council that we're doing. On top of that, you've got Trevethy. We're doing another 600 homes, which are predominantly affordable. And on top of that, we have our registered housing partners like Coastline Housing and Ocean and Live West, and they're all developing around 250 properties a year each. So our job really through the county deal is to encourage that and that particular avenue of house building to increase fourfold, or really, really drive that forward, so we move forward and produce those much needed social housing.
Linda, you wanted to come back in on that point.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify a point that I can't remember who it was who asked about. There was no mention of the NHS. Within the deal, there is a commitment to work with Cornwall on public health and dealing with health inequalities such as childhood obesity and the rural and coastal health inequalities. So, for me, this is a real good framework where we're starting to work with partners who make a difference to how we all live and work in Cornwall.
Going to go to the next question now from Kerno Jago. He says 12 million a year won't cover the deficit Cornwall Council are in this year, the second year that the authority's been in a deficit. Why is it such a big deal for Cornwall?
I don't mind coming in, Jamie, and I'm sure perhaps Lewis will come in as well. This is extra money, Kerno Jago. It's absolutely extra to what we've got already. And for me, any extra money coming into Cornwall is got to be of a huge benefit. And if I can just go back to a point I made earlier on, this is just the start of a devolution deal. We can see, and it can be evidence that, once you've agreed to a devolution deal and you have a mayor, it's very clear that the government continue to provide more devolved powers and absolutely more funding. So it's a start, it's absolutely extra money, and that's why I believe it is a big deal. Kerno Jago. Thank you.
Linda, I'm going to, as a journalist, I'm going to challenge you slightly on that one. Obviously, with the result of Brexit, we've lost millions of pounds of EU funding. So this effectively is a sticking plaster, is it not?
I'm going to disagree with you, Jamie, because the commitment was that Cornwall would not be disadvantaged, and we've had 132 million in shared prosperity funding. And I perhaps would like to invite Lewis to come in because he's the portfolio holder for the economy. And so apart from that 132 million, we've had significant other funding coming in standalone grants. But if I may, I'd like to hand over to Lewis, who is the economy portfolio holder.
Thank you, Jamie. Yes, absolutely. This money that's associated with the devolution deal is not the money that's to replace former European money. As Linda said, on that count, there's 132 million pounds of shared prosperity funding. There's 5.6 million pounds of rural prosperity funding. There's also 89 million pounds of town deal funding. There's almost 20 million pounds of future high street funding, etc., etc. There's a number of pots that are to replace European funding. This is not it. This is over and above that funding, and this is 390 million pounds of investment that Cornwall would not otherwise get, or will not get this if we turn down the deal. And the important thing is, the way that mayoral authorities work and where mayoral deals work, there are numerous examples of where this has been a success financially already up and down the country. The investment fund, £12 million a year, yes, that's not to be spent on core council services. It can act as match funding in many cases to secure further investment, either from the public or the private sector. And if you look at areas like Teesside, you look at areas like Manchester, you look at areas like Sheffield, the investment fund is only the start. It merely creates the environment that attracts further funding from both the public and the private sector. And we see already mayoral authorities up and down the country where the investment fund is merely a lever that's leveraged hundreds of millions of pounds per year, extra additional funding, just by creating that right environment for external investment.
Okay, just going to take a next question from Facebook for you. This is from Victoria Hoskin. She says, can you give an example of the brownfield sites you're looking at? And what NHS education sites are you looking at purchasing land from? I'm guessing from a planning perspective and housing perspective, Councillor Monk.
Yeah, so I mean, brownfield sites, you might have a property, I think Penwithick in St Austell is just an example, where you've got an existing building there that needs to be knocked down and then rebuilt with some housing rebuilt there. And the issue is obviously the knocking down the demolition of the actual building costs an absolute fortune. So a traditional house builder or a traditional developer may well not do it and may well sit on it for ages. What this allows is to grant fund some of these sites and then get them, into operation and get some houses built on them. The NHS education sites, this is the issue we faced in the past. So the NHS does have a lot of estate and it has a lot of spare land, but it's really difficult sort of trying to sit down with them and actually get a deal with them where they say, look, we've got a few acres here, we want to build some staff accommodation or some affordable housing for our staff or key workers, and it's just a real cumbersome process at the moment to actually get the stakeholders in the room and actually work something out. What this does, it sets up a specific commission where they have to be in the room. We will be in the room, and all the other major landholding stakeholders, public body owned land, will be together in the room, and with the aim of actually providing that land and releasing it so we can build some much needed housing on it.
Barbara, you've been involved quite heavily with the Camborne Pool regeneration projects and some of the stuff there. And there's a lot of brownfield sites in and around the Camborne area that have been identified, I believe.
Yes, interestingly enough, Jamie, in my role as chairman of the Camborne Pool, Lugden Redruth and Mining Villages place shaping board, which is I've been involved with for quite a few years now. About 12 months ago now, we, all of us who are members of the board, actually did a very quick look around our particular areas and came up with a list of, if I remember rightly, we actually ended up with 35 different sites all over the patch, which actually many of them had planning permission, but nobody was bringing forward. And the big problem with that was indeed the cost of the remediation of the land. I mean, we live here, as you well know, in a very heavily mined and contaminated area. So obviously building houses in our area, and you have to say we're not like Rock or places like that. The actual value of houses built in this area is less than it is in some of the more desirable seaside places. So we came up, as I say, with a list of 35 sites, which if they were all built on tomorrow would give us something like 600 properties in our particular patch. And I think that's the example I would use of brownfield sites that we have, and we have them everywhere, where people have got land, they want to develop them, but they simply cannot because there is an issue with the remediation of the land in order to make it profitable to develop.
I'm guessing there'll be a lot of work as well that with NHS partners who not necessarily based in Cornwall on making those decisions. Right, next question comes in from Paul Daly. Will Cornwall lose any money in funding when it comes to devolution? I'm guessing, Lewis, that's a question for you.
No, absolutely. This is completely separate to any funding that the council already receives. It's above and beyond that funding, and as is sort of as is evident in the deal, the £390 million is split across a number of different areas. It's not all going into one area. There's many areas there, but absolutely not. The core services that the council already provide and the way in which they're provided will remain the same. This is over and above in order to do a number of different things and a number of different functions, which the council hope to get more control of.
Next question comes in from Kaylee via Facebook. She says, why is the Mayor for Cornwall being pushed so hard? Who really stands to benefit from this?
I don't mind answering that. So when government came to us and they gave options, and the option that we wanted to look at was a level 3, which is where we're sitting at the moment. But part of that agreement was that we had to have a directly elected mayor. And I've been quite honest at the very start. I wrote to the Prime Minister and I wrote to the Secretary of State and said, we want to have a level 3, but we don't want to have a mayor. And I was pushed back on both occasions because the level 3 comes with a directly elected mayor, and the reason why is because the government actually want to understand the long-term relationship that we're going to have with that directly elected mayor, who's voted in by the residents, in this case, the residents of Cornwall. And when you're talking to outside investors to get that inward investment, what became very clear to me and to quite a few of us in the group was that people from overseas actually understand what a mayor does. They understand the power and they understand the influence of a mayor. And we can see here, sitting in Cornwall, the influence that mayors have throughout the UK. As Lewis has referred to, the mayor of Teesside, how they're able to sit around that table, get that extra funding and get that power and that influence into Cornwall, where the decisions can be made as opposed to being made in Whitehall. So who really stands to benefit from this? Well, it's part of the level 3 deal. For me, it is about democracy. So I would say that the people who are going to benefit are going to be the residents of Cornwall, who are going to be initially getting an additional £390 million extra, knowing that there's potential for further funding and further power to be devolved for Cornwall.
Jenny Bishop on Facebook, I think you've kind of almost answered the question, but she does kind of raise the point of why do we have to have a mayor when we've already got a unitary authority in place and a structure which people are familiar with? Why does it feel like we're not being given the choice to have the devolved powers with either structure?
Well, I think I have answered that. Level 3 comes with a directly elected a mayor. And so I get it now, and I understand why the government want to have this in place. And I note with interest that it's a discussion that the Labour Party are having, because they get the mayor, they understand how it works, and this is something that they're looking to implement if they get into power. So we still have the unitary council, we still have 87 elected councillors. There's going to be no difference to the roles and responsibilities of those elected councillors. But instead of having a leader who gets voted in each year by 87 elected councillors, that mayor is going to be voted in by the residents, the eligible residents in Cornwall. And when I say eligible, I mean those who are able to vote. So for me, it's very democratic.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much for answering that, Linda. So Jago Pell LDPS says on Facebook, it says in the document the deal is going to be reviewed every 5 years. If Westminster decides the money is not being used correctly, they will withdraw, leaving Cornwall to fund the mayor at over £1 million a year. Linda, are you able to answer that one?
Right. I think it's right and proper that when a government invests so much money into an authority, they do need to put in what I call the checks and balances to make sure that we're following through on how the government, in this particular case, the Conservative government, want to ensure that we're absolutely delivering on what we've agreed to deliver. So I don't have a problem with that. And I think it's only right and proper. The interesting statement about the cost of a mayoral office, I hear £1 million being bandied around, and that's personally not a figure I recognise. But what I will say is that part of this devolution deal, the government are going to be providing 750k as what I call capacity funding to get everything launched, and so for 2 years the office of the mayor is going to be cost neutral. So the fact about the government reviewing us is, well, we've also got that opportunity to review the government. So yeah. And the independent remuneration is sitting at the moment looking at Cornwall Council's allowances and special responsibilities. And it will be down to an independent remuneration panel who will determine any recommendations going forward to the cost of a mayor and the staff. But I'm not recognising £1 million. definitely not.
I suppose also in one of these kind of deals, you've also got to have that accountability framework from both sides. So government keeping up their end of the bargain, and obviously Cornwall as the local authority keeping up their end of the bargain.
Yeah, and obviously part of this process is a considerable governance review, because part of the deal is that the mayor does need to be accountable. And part of that review will be an overview and scrutiny, where the mayor will be responsible to answer to that particular overview and scrutiny. There is a lot of work to do on governance, but I'm absolutely confident with the officers within Cornwall Council, because it is officers who are going to be taking this particular work through, but it's going to be elected members who are going to be scrutinising and determining the small detail. A lot of work, but I'm confident that we will get there so that the elected members can review and make remarks.
Linda, thank you very much.
Yes.
Martin, I'm going to come to you a second. There's a question come in from Paul Stanley. He says on Facebook, will devolution give better... Oh, sorry, wrong question. Hang on. My screen has just jumped. Paul Stanley says, asking, will devolution give better access to funds for making Cornwall Council's housing stock carbon neutral?
So, yes, one of the things mentioned in the deal is additional support for things like retrofit. But I'd also draw your attention to one example is the funding that will come with the deal to develop deep geothermal heat networks. So the large development just outside Trow at Langgarth, for example, there will be funding support to link that development to the deep geothermal site on United Downs to create what's called a heat network. So all the heating and hot water in those houses will be carbon neutral, taken from the deep geothermal. But as I say, also mentioned within the detail of the deal is how we can work better with government to draw down funding for the retrofit of our social housing stock, which I think is what you're referring to there. So absolutely, that's very much part of what we'll be trying to achieve.
Martin, thank you. Brian Clemmo writes on Facebook, what's happening about Airbnbs? They shouldn't be allowed. Councillor Monk, I'm guessing that's a question for yourself.
Yeah, so Airbnbs and holiday lets has obviously seen a massive rise in the last couple of years, and that's been one of the key issues we faced at Cornwall Council in dealing with people who've been evicted from the private rented sector, as private rented landlords have taken a different view of their stock and decided to flip them into the Airbnb market. And of course, up until, well, it still is quite unregulated, really. Anyone who's got a second home or a property can turn it into a holiday let. What this deal does, and with what government actions, what the government's doing already, is will allow us to create a register, which will then actually be able to, so we'll actually have the data of where these B&Bs are, and through planning regulations, which will come later next year, will allow us to sort of be able to control the amount of Airbnbs. But of course, what the government's also done is they've allowed us from next year, from May 24, I think it is, to actually charge double council tax on all Airbnbs and second homes. So, the screw is tightening for people who want to do Airbnbs, and it's putting I think we'll start putting our stock back into the private rented sector, which we desperately need. We need the holiday makers and the holiday industry to be very, very strong and vibrant, but also we need to make sure that we provide as much housing for our local people as possible. So it is a balancing act, but I believe it's turning in the right way now. It's gone too far the other way, I think, over the last few years with the pandemic, but I think with the powers that we will get to be able to start to regulate second homes and Airbnbs, it will tip it back in our favour and provide much more private rented stock.
Yeah, the private rented stock is essential, really, for supporting those NHS workers, social services, etc., who we desperately need in Cornwall. Mark says on Facebook, why is there such a rush to push this deal through? In the deal, Section 21 states that it's subject to a resolution being passed at the full council no later than the 26th of March 2024. The full council should have been able to scrutinise the deal before signing, and they should have also been able to scrutinise the public consultation before publication. Is this haste not compromising democracy here in Kernow?
So I'm happy to come in, Jamie, on this one. So what actually happened just over a week ago when the Levelling Up Minister came down to Hannah Davison, that was a minded to proceed, I'm going to call it, document. And that absolutely allowed all the details to be made available to everybody, to every single person. And I was really pleased that we got to that particular point because we could start discussing it, because we have been handicapped with confidentiality. And once that signature was put onto that document, that then allowed, that will then allow the extra funding that is part of this devolution to be utilised, because there's some parts of it, for example, Ollie's made reference to brownfield funding and the housing, and there's also 3 million for culture. That can start being allocated out to Cornwall from 2023 onwards. So I actually don't think it's been done with haste, because this is not the final decision. That is going to be done, if I've got my timetable right, that's going to be done in July at a full council of the 87 elected members. So that's quite a long time scale. And also, it's allowed us to have that full 10-week consultation where, you know, we're absolutely encouraging everybody to participate. And so, you know, we need to have those results evaluated and shared with everybody. Full council in July. If it's supported, then that will be an election in 2024, May 2024. So I actually don't think it's rushed. I think it's a very space awareness for people to be able to take in all the details and have that good discussion. And then it will be down to 87 elected councillors to vote in full council.
Linda, there has been some criticism today in some sections of the media about the actual consultation process. Obviously, people listening to this may have seen those headlines today. Would you like to kind of respond to that?
I'm going to have to own up, Jamie. If there's headlines, I've not seen them because I've started my meetings this morning. I've had about 10 meetings today, so I've missed out on those headlines. So perhaps you need to tell me.
I will find the headlines for you, and I shall bring those to you in a second. I'll tell you, we'll ask another question first of all.
Thank you.
Becky Lawrence on Facebook says, why can't Cornwall Council create their own register of holiday lets? In fact, why can't Cornwall Council provide their own legislation for the holiday let market, considering they should know the area better than a remote government?
Before perhaps I bring, if Ollie comes in, I think Airbnb recognising how things are moving. I've already had a meeting with them at their request because they, I think, were sensing how it was going to be important to be working in partnership. And so we will be having another meeting again in the new year, because we were, as Ollie's referred to, waiting for that legislation or that notification for government. But I'll hand over to Ollie, who absolutely knows this this position better than I.
Yeah, it just simply needs primary legislation at government. We can't simply create our own planning laws and our own registration schemes without government consent. And I think the government have just announced today, actually, that we're going to get that consent. So each other area, Cornwall especially, but other areas of the country as well, where they've got a similar problem with too many second homes adversely affecting the housing market, they're going to get the powers as well. But I mean, Cornwall's been talking about this for a while, for the last couple of years at least, that we need a registration and we need more control over the amount and how our housing stock is being used. I can see that we're starting to get that coming through. It's never quick enough, but it is starting to move in the right direction. We will have a registration scheme within the next sort of 12, 18 months.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much for answering that one, Becky. Hopefully that has answered your question. Don't forget, if you have a question for the council members that we have on the stream this evening, you can put them on the social media platform that you're watching, and we will put them to the councillors in front of you so that your question can be answered. Arthur Wills, he says, why is the deal conditional on having an elected mayor? I know we've discussed this already because it's level 3. May explain to us what level 3 actually means, please, Linda.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. So level 3 is what we've got here in front of us. It's got the capacity funding, which is going to be £12 million a year. It's giving us the brownfield site funding. It's given us the housing scheme funding of 7 million. It's also given us the heritage schemes of 3 million. And also we've got some other funding as well for capacity funding for housing, and we've got capacity funding for transport. And also we've got some extra funding for Cornish distinctiveness stroke the language. So these are extra funding that we would not have got had we not wished to pursue a level 3. And the elected mayor, if I'm going to repeat myself, so I'm sorry if you've heard this before, but the elected mayor is somebody who's recognised outside of the UK. They know that a mayor has authority, has the power, can get things done. People outside, when we're looking for that inward investment, absolutely understand what a mayor is. And, with our European partners, they have mayors, they know, they get it. And as I said before, this is a starting platform, really, for more devolved powers and for more opportunity for investment. And this is how the deal is set up. As I said before, I did write initially and said, can we have level 3 without an elected mayor? I was told very robustly that this is the model. The government likes to work with a recognisable figure. And, when I get that and I understand it, I can see why. Because also it's about democracy, Jamie. 87 people elect a leader of the council, whereas the mayor is elected by every single person who's got that ability to vote. So this is given the whole of Cornwall that choice to choose or elect their mayor who's going to represent them for 4 years. They will be the voice that government will talk to, and the mayor will be acting on behalf of the 87 elected members that are already in the council. And there's going to be no difference to the work of those 87 elected councillors, and there's going to be no diminishing of their contribution and the importance of their role within the democracy of Cornwall. And the mayor isn't going to create another layer. The mayor will replace the leader.
Okay. I'm going to ask a question because I'm going to come at this from a complete layman's terms. You talk about level 3. We've talked about the different aspects of funding that opens up. What were there other levels offered to Cornwall, or are there other options available?
There was level 1, level 2, and level 3. And to a certain extent, what was in level 2 is what we've already got, because we're already a mature, devolved authority. And so there was nothing different in level 2. For us to be ambitious, it was level 3, because it's level 3 that's going to give us the extra money. It's going to give us that, what I call that seat around the top table with the other mayors within the UK who have demonstrated year in, year out that they're able to improve the inward investment coming in, and they're able to increase of powers that they have. And so it's a stepping stone, but it's a really good stepping stone as far as I'm concerned for the people of Cornwall.
Thanks, Linda. So Jago comes back in with another question on Facebook. He says council tax on second homes would raise around £27 million a year. So £12 million as part of this devolution deal doesn't seem like a big deal. Councillor Monk, perhaps that's a question for yourself, or
that's. I mean, the £27 million assumes that every single second home or holiday let starts paying double council tax, which may or may not be the case. So I think that's quite it'd be great if that much money is raised. It means we can spend it on much needed, increasing the delivery of much needed housing for local people to buy or rent, but I'm not sure if that'll be the figure. And Linda might wish to answer how that compares to £12 million a year. I think it just shows what the government's doing, really. It's giving more and more power to Cornwall to steer its own ship, and it's the start of a devolution process. It's not the end of it. This is just the start of the beginning, really. So it's and moving down the line, I think it will give more and more autonomy for Cornwall to have a greater say in what it does, and we will end up like the Welsh Assembly, and I can see that being maybe 5 or 10 years down the track, but it has to start somewhere, and I think this is the great first step. But Linda may wish to pick up on the 12.
Yeah, I'm just coming back to the fact, Jamie, if I may, that this is extra money. And, what we can do with the £12 million on a yearly basis is absolutely use it to drive the growth and take forward our priorities. And, we've got a Cornwall plan that's got a timeline of 2050. This is absolutely going to help us to deliver on that. And I don't want to apologise for keep sort of repeating myself, but this is the first step. And just looking at other mayoral authorities, the first step has been a really good step that leads on to further funding and more devolved powers.
Which mayoral authorities are you looking at and hoping that Cornwall could emulate?
Well, I would have to say Tees. When you see what's happened up in Tees with the mayor there, that's a Conservative mayor. And then, to try and have a bit of a political balance, Jamie, when you see what Andy Burnham's done up in Manchester, I mean, I don't know how many devolved deals he's on. I think it must be in excess of 4 or 5. But that's two mayors from 2 different political parties absolutely demonstrating how having a mayor has made a difference to their communities. We might not always agree with the politics, but what we can't disagree with, the difference it's made to communities and to that inward investment, and absolutely making a difference to people's communities and their lives.
I suppose I'm going to slightly challenge that. They're 2 big conurbations. How does that compare to a rurally isolated community of Cornwall? And
I'm not going to keep my perimeters as a rural small county. We've got huge ambitions. I mean, when you think of the natural reserve resources that we've got our spaceport. I mean, how many local authorities can actually say they've got space and the excitement of launch and the research and development that come from there? How many local authorities can actually talk about the future potential of flow, of lithium, of geothermal, as Martin Alves referred to? These are huge, exciting developments, and having a deal, for me, is absolutely going to bring in that inward investment and really make a difference. So tourism's been important to Cornwall, but tourism doesn't need to be now the only sector that's going to make a difference. We've got an opportunity to absolutely develop our skills, provide well-paid jobs, and I'm sure Barbara will echo this. We want to provide a good foundation in Cornwall so that our youngsters don't think automatically that they've got to leave Cornwall to have a career or have a good financial footing. We can make that environment here in Cornwall, and we're going to be given the tools to start making a difference.
Barbara, do you want to come in and comment?
Yes, I mean it's part of certainly my view and my ambition is that every child in Cornwall will know that there is a future for them in Cornwall if that is what they wish to do. There are far too many young people who currently do not feel that they can actually make a decent living in Cornwall, and that's what we have to do. We have fantastic resources here, and we aren't particularly good, I don't think, yet at making sure that we infuse our young people and encourage them to think about Cornwall as being the place to be. Don't forget, we're the first bit in the island, not the last bit, so you don't drop off when you go to Land's End. Land's End's where you put your foot and you start. This is where the economy starts. So
And Jamie, if I could just come back as well, we're incredibly proud of our Cornish flag. We're incredibly proud of our culture and our heritage, and for so long, that pride has not been recognised within minority languages, that appear in forthcoming legislation, and the government have promised that they're going to work with us, and and that commitment has been translated as well into £3 million that's going to be used towards our culture and heritage in Cornwall. So for me, it's seen ticks all around to absolutely making a difference.
Yeah, please don't think I was questioning the drive and the ambition of Cornwall. I'm a very proud Cornwall ambassador. No, definitely. Cornwall is one of the places to be when it comes to doing business, and it's thriving. Yeah. Our business community is absolutely thriving. Yeah. So, Martin, I'm going to come to you very quickly. What part of the deal are you most excited about?
I think I mentioned geothermal at Langgarth. I think the other bit within my portfolio that is really significant is the support it's going to be giving Cornwall to develop the floating offshore wind industry out in the Celtic Sea. So that is not only going to support our carbon neutral ambitions here in Cornwall, but also supporting the ability of the UK to become self-sufficient on renewable energy. The other thing that actually excites me is that idea of a mayor being part of what's called the M10 group. The M10 group is the group of all the mayors, so Andy Burnham, Andy Street, Sadiq Khan in Liverpool, Ben Houchin. I think the fact that Cornwall is going to be sat at that top table with them will give us an opportunity to punch above our weight, and that really excites me. And that's actually, for me, when we first started to embark on this journey, and as Cabinet, obviously, we've been discussing this for a few months now. Like my colleagues, I was actually a bit sceptical about the mayor thing, and very attracted by the idea of a level 3 deal and the money and the additional powers it would bring. But I didn't really get the point of the mayor. Having done a bit of research now and spoken to other mayors like Ben Houchin up in Teesside, I now actually get the mayor thing as well. And I actually see that the influence that a mayor will bring on the national and international stage for Cornwall is probably one of the biggest bits of this deal. And so actually for me, the mayor has become something really important in its own right.
So almost like a champion and an ambassador for Cornwall.
Exactly. How many people can name council leaders across the country? They probably can't. You ask them to name some mayors, and most people who have just a fleeting interest in politics will be able to name people like Andy Burnham, Sadiq Khan, Andy Street, Tracy Braben. Those names are actually national figures, and hopefully our mayor can become one of those national figures. Obviously, we've got to elect the right person, but that person can actually stand on the national stage and shout loudly for Cornwall.
Thank you, Martin. So I'm actually going to throw this open to the panel right now. What do we mean when you say that more decisions would be made in Cornwall? What practical difference really will it make for us in that respect? That's open to the panel. So whoever wants to go first.
So, Barbara.
Nicely volunteered.
Sorry, I had my mute button on. It's habit. I think the thing that excites me about all of this as well, Jamie, is the fact that it gives us opportunities to look at, if you look in the learning and skills and the education side of things, we know in Cornwall what we need to do to support and assist our young people to get the best that they possibly can out of their education. And for me, being able to talk to Department Education, for example, and to DWP, and actually start telling them what we want and what will work for us in Cornwall is really, really important. You know, I think the key thing for me about all of this is that we in Cornwall know what we need. Cornwall is different, and one size does not fit all. And we, for example, have an outstanding children's service in Cornwall on frankly not a huge amount of money. And I think if we start talking to the government and showing them really what we can do, we can start really making a difference to our children and our young people. And that for me is the key. I'm a bit like Martin. I didn't get this at all for quite a while, but now I understand it. And I think if we want to be ambitious for our young people, we have to take the opportunities when they come to us.
So, Jamie, I don't mind coming in. I think the difference it's going to make is that, you know, we've got that long-term investment fund, and we're going to know exactly what that agreed annual allocation is going to be. We're actually going to have a role in designating and delivering future contractual employment programs. That ability to establish a mayoral development corporation, as Ollie's referred to, you know, devolution of locally led brownfield site funding, that consolidation of local transport, because part of the deal too was the bus franchise. Here now, we've got that future partnership with the Great British Railways. And so the other exciting fact for me is I believe that Cornwall needs to be on that big stage, and this will allow Cornwall to be in that big stage, because we all of us think Cornwall is unique. Cornwall does punch above its weight, but we need to be there to demonstrate to the rest of the UK that my favourite phrase is, not only have we got the potential to turbocharge Cornwall's economy, we can absolutely make a big contribution to turbocharging the UK's economy with our natural resources.
I've got a question from Jamie Robinson that's come in on Facebook, but I'm just going to challenge something that's been said there about how I think it was Martin who said it first, that this person would be a champion for Cornwall. Obviously, you've the council structure at the moment with Linda as the council leader, working with the MPs. Surely the MPs should be championing Cornwall for us already.
Okay, yes, they do. We have 6 MPs, and individually they do look to be championing. But the level 3 is a new ball game for Cornwall. We would be joining other mayors on level 3 who've got a directly elected mayor. So the government knows exactly who they're going to be talking to. They know that mayor's been elected in for 4 years, and that election has been done by the residents of Cornwall. So everything is about partnership working as well, Jamie. So, you know, you'll hopefully you'll have a mayor of Cornwall, and also at the same time you've got 6 MPs, and from time to time they may not all be of the same political persuasion, but I would say that regardless of political parties, everyone needs to be working together to get the absolute best for Cornwall. And having an elected mayor and having that seat at that top table is absolutely the right place to go. And also that mayor is going to have that mandate, and they're going to be speaking on behalf of all the residents because they voted that particular mayor to be that person.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go to the last question on Facebook, which is, on YouTube, I believe. It's come from Jamie. It's unusual for government to offer money for nothing. Does this mean they've assessed that by giving Cornwall money now, they'll save money in the future by not having to centrally fund certain projects? I'm guessing that's going to be a question mostly for you, Linda, but I'm also looking at Lewis for this one from an economy perspective.
Lewis to come in, please.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely not the case. I think, as we've said a number of times, this is money which is above and beyond. And I would encourage anyone, if they're unsure about what a mayor or mayor's office can deliver in terms of future money, they, I would have a quick Google, Mayor of Teesside, Mayor of Manchester, Mayor of Sheffield, any areas, and there's across the political spectrum there, and look at the amount of money that those mayoral development corporations and those mayoral offices are bringing in each year. As we've said before, they're constantly having their deals looked at and reviewed every 5 years, and actually, in all cases, every time they've had a review, the amount of money that they've received from central government has actually increased and not decreased. So we've seen mayoral authorities already year on year increasing the amount of money that they've got as part of the deal. We've seen year on year mayoral authorities being able to attract more money from the public bidding process and from the private sector. So actually it means the opposite of the question. We've seen that this actually brings more government money in, not less. And so, I would encourage anyone, just do a quick search, look at the information that's out there already. If in doubt, there are numerous examples already where this is already working, already delivering more influence, already sort of delivering more money. And that's the important thing. It's above and beyond what we get, which is the key fact.
And Jamie, if I may just quickly come in.
Yep.
This is part of the government's levelling up paper, where they want to make a difference. They want a local authority to absolutely be able to make a difference to every single person who lives in Cornwall. And what they're doing is providing us with the tools and that future investment ability to absolutely make a difference. And so I don't see it as money for nothing. I see the government trusting Cornwall with its ambition to absolutely deliver on our priorities. And we do want to make a difference. And for me, this is, as I keep saying, this is the first stepping stone in absolutely making that difference to the people of Cornwall.
Obviously, the consultation's open now at Let's Talk Cornwall. Councillor Alvey, what would you say to encourage people to go and have their say?
Well, I think that what I would say is, first of all, before you fill in that consultation document, just have a look at the supporting documents that go with it. Particularly, there's a frequently asked questions document that goes through in more detail than we could cover tonight. Exactly what the difference is between the current leadership model and the mayoral model. It goes through the timeline, explains some of the details around the money, but it also, there's a very useful table in there that actually explains the difference in terms of powers and governance of the current leader and the mayor. And when you read through that, I think you'll realise that in terms of governance in Cornwall, this is not a seismic change. This is a minor tweak. The difference is actually in how that person will be able to engage and relate with the rest of the country in bringing investment into Cornwall.
Anybody else have any final words they'd like to say?
If you've got some thoughts, if you've got some ideas, do fill in that consultation survey, because it's there so we can hear people's views. And the one thing I've always asked is, please keep an open mind. And now that you've got all the facts, do exactly what Martin suggested. Read those commonly asked questions and answers, and look at the deal documents, and keep an open mind, and hopefully make the right decision for the people of Cornwall, because it's not just for now, it's most definitely for the future. And it's for our grandchildren, and we want to make a difference.
Councillor Linda Taylor, the leader of Cornwall Council, thank you very much. Councillor Ollie Monk, portfolio holder for housing. Councillor Martin Alvey, the portfolio holder for the environment. Councillor Barbara Ellenbrook, the portfolio holder for children. And Councillor Lewis Gardner, the portfolio holder for the economy. Thank you very much for taking part in this live session this evening. Thank you so much to everybody for all the questions that you've put through via all of the social media platforms that we've been streaming on this evening. Like I say, if you want to take part and have your say on this, please go to letstalk.cornwall.gov.uk, where you can have your say and read that supporting documentation and make your mind up after reading that supporting information. This is an ongoing discussion. You've got time to take part in it. But please go and visit Let's Talk Cornwall to go and read the documentation in full and take part in this devolution survey, so that the council is fully informed before it makes those decisions moving forward.